Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Today we're at the live studios, in case you haven't been around, here at Radha Lane in Houston, Texas, ISKCON of Houston, Texas, right next to Shri Radha Nilamadava's temple. And we have a room full of family, Krishna's family, and we're going to continue the Srimad-Bhagavatam. With the mercy of all the devotees and all of you out there in Sabri space are welcome. And thank you for coming. And thank you for joining this family of hearing from Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada actually insisted that his title be the founder Acharya of ISKCON. Whenever his name is written down. Are you okay?
I'm looking around.
This?
Yeah, I had a boil, so it was...
Lanced? Anyway.
That's why I'm covering
Maybe
it up.
the ear, the sound going in the ear will help. Okay, soothe it. Now I feel kinship because I was here with my arm and now you're here with your ear, but you're here. We're here. It's the main thing. The main thing is the main thing, to hear the Bhagavatam every day like this. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada gave an instruction to all of his leading men and secretaries and everyone when he first started this movement, that wherever his name is printed, whether it be on a business card or it be on a poster or on letterhead or in a book or a sign, any place where ISKCON is, international, it's always Founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Very important, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur never used that title for himself. Do you know that? It only appeared once in all of his followers and literatures, and it appeared only once. One of his disciples used that term, but he never did. But he did use the term in relationship to Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka, who are the founder acharyas for the Kali Yuga from the four Adi Gurus, Shiv, Lakshmi, four Kumaras, and Brahma. Right? They're the Adi Gurus of the four Sampradayas. And then when it came to the time of the Kali Yuga, everything was disparate, so it needed to be brought together. So Krishna arranged for those personalities to come, to bring them together. So now Prabhupada is insisting that he's been called the founder Acharya. So this is very significant, because in the Bhavishya Purana, there's a prediction, because the Bhavishya Purana is history and prediction. And it has a prediction that at some point in the Kali Yuga, the four Sampradayas will come together underneath Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktivinoda Thakur revealed that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to all of these four Sampradaya Acharyas. Before he appeared physically, he appeared to them. And he told them that he was going to take two major points from each one of their teachings and bring them together. And it ended up being Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva and his philosophy, which has got elements of all of them. So this is very, very important that we hear and keep Srila Prabhupada's books in the center of our lives. Even we have initiating disciples now. Many of us are initiating disciples. And some have many thousands of disciples. Some of us only have a few. But the principle is to keep Srila Prabhupada in the center as the founder Acharya, to keep the whole movement together so it doesn't break up into a whole bunch of different movements. So therefore I'm expressing my gratitude and appreciation for those of you who are coming every day to hear the Bhagavatam like this, and let us pray that it continues to spread and grow. So I'm really appreciating, we have a devotee, we call her the Supreme Mother, not Supreme Mother, the Mother for everybody, Nitya, and she brings people. Guru Priya and Nitya, these two. Anyway, they bring people to hear every day, and they're here every day also. So this is how I think we'll diversify the community. I mean, it's already happening, and it's going in a very, very nice direction. And if we all cooperate together, it will please Srila Prabhupada a lot. Okay, let's hear what Sanatana Goswami has to say about the Srimad-Bhagavatam and why it's so important for us to hear it every day together. It's the Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram from Sri Krishna Leela Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrab Dipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwanduditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin adini chochatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit katayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So here we are, 4th canto, 29th chapter, and Narada Muni is explaining the allegorical story that he told to King Pracinabarhi, again, only this time more explicitly. He's not talking now about someone else, a story. He's talking directly to him and explaining to him all the elements of what he explained before, directly to him. Because sometimes, we don't get it unless somebody says something directly to us. So he's continuing his teachings to the king, Pracinabarhi. My dear king, woman who was very attractive in the beginning, but in the end very disturbing, is exactly like a flower, which is attractive in the beginning and detestable at the end. With woman, the living entity is entangled with lusty desires, and he enjoys sex, just as one enjoys the aroma of a flower. He thus enjoys a life of sense gratification, from his tongue to his genitals, and in this way, the living entity considers himself very happy in family life. United with his wife, he always remains absorbed in such thoughts. He feels great pleasure in hearing the talks of his wife and children, which are like the sweet humming of bumblebees that collect honey from flower to flower. He forgets that before him is time, which is taking away his lifespan, with the passing of day and night. He does not see the gradual diminishing of his life, nor does he care about the superintendent of death, who is trying to kill him from behind. Just try to understand this. You are in a precarious position and are threatened from all sides. Purport. Materialistic life means forgetting one's constitutional position as the eternal servant of Krishna. And this forgetfulness is especially enhanced in the Grihastha ashram. In the Grihastha ashram, a young man accepts a young wife who is very beautiful in the beginning, but in due course of time, after giving birth to many children and becoming older and older, she demands many things from the husband to maintain the entire family. At such a time, the wife becomes detestable to the very man who accepted her in her younger days. One becomes attached to the Grihastha ashram for two reasons only. The wife cooks palatable dishes for the satisfaction of her husband's tongue, and she gives him sexual pleasure at night. A person attached to the Grihastha ashram is always thinking of these two things, palatable food and sex enjoyment. The talks of the wife, which are enjoyable as a family recreation, and the talks of the children, both attract the living entity. He thus forgets that he has to die someday and has to prepare for the next life if he wants to be put in a congenial body. The deer in the flower garden is an allegory used by the great sage Narada to point out to the king that the king himself is similarly entrapped by such surroundings. Actually, everyone is surrounded by such a family, which misleads one. The living entity thus forgets that he has to return home, back to Godhead. He simply becomes entangled in family life. Prahlad Maharaj has therefore hinted, Hitvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gato yad darim ashrayeta. Bhagavatam 7:5-5. Family life is considered a blind well, andakupam, into which a person falls and dies without help. Prahlad Maharaj recommends that while one's senses are there and one is strong enough, he should abandon the Grihastha ashram and take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, going to the forest of Vrindavan. According to Vedic civilization, one has to give up family life at a certain age, the age of 50, take vanaprastha, and eventually remain alone as a sannyasi. That is the prescribed method of Vedic civilization, known as the varnashram dharma. When one takes sannyas after enjoying family life, he pleases the Supreme Lord Vishnu. One has to understand one's position in family or worldly life. That is called intelligence. One should not remain always trapped in family life to satisfy his tongue and genitals in association with the wife. In such a way, one simply spoils his life. According to Vedic civilization, it is imperative to give up the family at a certain stage, by force if necessary. Unfortunately, the so-called followers of Vedic life do not give up their family even at the end of life, unless they are forced by death. There should be a thorough overhauling of the social system, and society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. Text 55. My dear king, just try to understand the allegorical position of the deer. Be fully conscious of yourself, and give up the pleasure of hearing about promotion to heavenly planets by fruitive activity. Give up household life, which is full of sex, as well as stories about such things, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the mercy of the liberated souls. In this way, please give up your attraction for material existence. Purport. In one of his songs, Srila Narottam Das Thakur writes, Karmakanda, Jnanakanda, Kevala Visharabandha, Amrita Baliya Kebakaya, Nana Yoni Sarapire, Kardaya, Bhakshana Kare, Tara Janma Adak Patti Jaya. Fruitive activities and mental speculation are simply cups of poison. Whoever drinks them, thinking them to be nectar, must struggle very hard, life after life, in different types of bodies. Such a person eats all kinds of nonsense and becomes condemned by his activities of so-called sense enjoyment. People are generally enamored of the fruitive results of worldly activity and mental speculation. They generally desire to be promoted to heavenly planets, merge into the existence of Brahman, or keep themselves in the midst of family life, enchanted by the pleasures of the tongue and genitals. The great sage Narada clearly instructs King Bharishman not to remain his entire life in the Grihastha ashram. Being in the Grihastha ashram means being under control of one's wife. One has to give up all this and put himself into the ashram of the Paramahamsa. That is, put himself under the control of the spiritual master. The Paramahamsa ashram is the ashram of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whom the spiritual master has taken shelter. The symptoms of the bona fide spiritual master are stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam 11.3.21. Tasmat gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam shabde pare chanishnatam brahman upashat ashrayam. Any person who is seriously desirous of achieving real happiness must seek out a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of a spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and arguments, and thus be able to convince others of their conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken complete shelter of the Supreme Godhead, leaving aside all material considerations, are to be considered as bona fide spiritual masters. A Paramahamsa is one who has taken shelter of the Parabrahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one takes shelter of the Paramahamsa spiritual master, gradually, through training and instruction, he will become detached from worldly life and ultimately return home, back to Godhead. The particular mention of Angana Sharmam Atsatama Yuttagatam is very interesting. The whole world is in the clutches of Maya, being controlled by woman. Not only is one controlled by the woman who is one's wife, but one is also controlled by so much sex literatures. That is the cause of one's being entangled in the material world. One cannot give up this abominable association through one's own effort, but if one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master who is a Paramahamsa, he will gradually be elevated to the platform of spiritual life. Now, in this age, after the internet, now they have this porn, and it's everywhere, and so many people are addicted to it now. Even women get addicted to it. It's horrible, and it's ruining the whole human society, causing it to fall into this disarray and fighting and violence. And you heard what happened in New Zealand just yesterday. I mean, it's just the hate coming from this guy is spreading all over the world, you know, and it's really a sad situation. The pleasing words of the Vedas, that's why when we're here together and hearing the Bhagavatam every together, we get a clear vision of how to be and who to be with and what to do and what not to do. It's so elevating and so soothing to the heart and so giving of confidence and security and peace. The pleasing words of the Vedas that inspire one to elevate oneself to the heavenly planets or merge into the existence of the Supreme are for the less intelligent, who are described in Bhagavad Gita as Mayaya Parita Jnana. Bhagavad Gita 7:15. Those whose intelligence, those whose knowledge is taken away by the illusory energy. Real knowledge means understanding the miserable condition of material life. One should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. One should take shelter of a bona fide liberated soul, the spiritual master, and gradually elevate himself to the spiritual platform and thus become detached from the material world. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Hangsa Sharanam refers to the cottage in which saintly persons live. Generally, a saintly person lives in a remote place, in the forest, or a humble cottage. However, we should note that the times have changed. It may be beneficial for a saintly person's own interest to go to the forest and live in a cottage, but if one becomes a preacher, especially in Western countries, he has to live in the sannyasa ashram. Oh, excuse me, that was editor. He has to invite many classes of men who are accustomed to living in comfortable apartments. Therefore, in this age, a saintly person has to make proper arrangements to receive people and attract them to the message of Krishna consciousness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, perhaps for the first time, introduced motor cars and palatial buildings for the residence of saintly persons, just to attract the general public in big cities. The main fact is that one has to associate with a saintly person. In this age, people are not going to search out a saint in the forest, so the saints and sages have to come to the big cities to make arrangements to receive the people in general who are accustomed to the modern amenities of material life. Gradually, such persons will learn that palatial buildings or comfortable apartments are not at all necessary. The real necessity is to become free from material bondage in whatever way possible, according to the orders of Srila Rupa Goswami. Ana saktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam uchate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2, 255. One should not be attached to material opulence, but material opulence may be accepted in the Krishna consciousness movement to facilitate the propagation of the movement. In other words, material opulence may be accepted as yukta vairagya, that is, for renunciation. Text 56. And that goes for the Grihastha ashram also. Translation. The king replied, My dear Brahmana, whatever you have said, I have heard with great attention, and considering all of it, have come to the conclusion that the acharyas, teachers, who engaged me in fruitive activity did not know this confidential knowledge. If they were aware of it, why did they not explain it to me? Purport. This is in India it's the Kula Gurus, the professional gurus. And in Vrindavan and other places, the Sapta leaders, the leaders of the Sapta Yagyas, Bhagavad Saptaha, come for 7 days, have a big party, then go back and do the same, stay the same. Purport. Actually, the so-called teachers or leaders of material society do not really know the goal of life. They are described in Bhagavad Gita as Mayaya Parita Jnana, Bhagavad Gita 7.15. They appear to be very learned scholars, but actually, the influence of the illusory energy has taken away their knowledge. Real knowledge means searching out Krishna. Vidaish Jasarvar Aham Eva Vedyaha. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. All Vedic knowledge is meant for searching out Krishna, because Krishna is the origin of everything. Janmad yasya yataha. Bhagavatam 1:1. In Bhagavad Gita 10:2, Krishna says, Aham adir hi devanam. I am the source of the demigods. Thus Krishna is the origin and beginning of all demigods, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all others. The Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are concerned with satisfying different demigods, but unless one is very advanced, he cannot understand that the original personality is Sri Krishna. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. After hearing the instructions of Narada, King Bharishman came to his senses. The real goal of life is to attain devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king therefore decided to reject the so-called priestly orders that simply engage their followers in the ritualistic ceremonies without giving effective instructions about the goal of life. At the present moment, the churches, temples, and mosques all over the world are not attracting people because foolish priests cannot elevate their followers to the platform of knowledge. Not being aware of the real goal of life, they simply keep their congregations in ignorance. Consequently, those who are well educated have become uninterested in the ritualistic ceremonies. At the same time, they are not benefited with real knowledge. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore very important for the enlightenment of all classes. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Bharishman, everyone should take advantage of this Krishna consciousness movement and abandon the stereotype ritualistic ceremonies that go on under the garb of so many religions. The Goswamis from the very beginning differed from the priestly class that was engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. Indeed, Srila Sanatana Goswami compiled his Hari Bhakti Vilas for the guidance of the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas, not caring for the lifeless activities of the priestly classes, take to full Krishna consciousness and become perfect in this very life. That is described in the previous verse as Paramahamsa Sharanam, taking shelter of the Paramahamsa, the liberated soul, and becoming successful in this life. Text 57. My dear Brahmana, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. Purport. King Bharishman was engaged in different types of sacrifice for elevation to the heavenly planets. People generally are attracted by these activities, and very rarely is a person attracted to devotional service, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms. Unless one is very, very fortunate, he does not take to devotional service. Even the so-called learned Vedic scholars are bewildered by devotional service. They are generally attracted to the rituals for sense gratification. In devotional service, there is no sense gratification, but only transcendental loving service to the Lord. Consequently, the so-called priests engaged in sense gratification do not very much like devotional service. The Brahmanas and the priests have been against this Krishna consciousness movement since it began with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, the priestly class lodged complaints to the Qazi, the magistrate of the Mohammedan government. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to lead a civil disobedience movement against the propaganda of the so-called followers of Vedic principles. These people are described as karma jada smartas, which indicates that they are priests engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. It is here stated that such people become bewildered, rishayo pihi muyanti. To save oneself from the hands of these karma jada smartas, one should strictly follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all reaction. Do not fear. Text 58. The results of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. Purport. A person generally does not know how one body is linked with another body. How is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body and yet another body in the next life? In yet another body in the next life. Or let's read that again. A person generally does not know how one body is linked with another body. How is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body in yet another body in the next life? This is a question the king wants Narada Muni to answer. How may one have a human body in this life and not have a human body in the next? Even great philosophers and scientists cannot account for the transferal of karma from one body to another. As we've experienced, every individual soul has an individual body, and one person's activities or one body's activities are not enjoyed or suffered by another body or another person. The question is how the activities of one body are suffered or enjoyed in the next. Text 59. The expert knowers of the Vedic conclusions say that one enjoys or suffers the results of his past activities. But practically it is seen that the body that performed the work in the last birth is already lost. How is it possible to enjoy or suffer the reactions of that work in a different body? Purport. Atheists want evidence for the resultant actions of past activities. Therefore they ask, where is the proof that I am suffering and enjoying the resultant actions of past karma? They have no idea of how the subtle body carries the results of the present body's actions down to the next body. The present body may be finished grossly, but the subtle body is not finished. The present body may be finished grossly, but the subtle body is not finished. It carries the soul to the next body. Actually, the gross body is dependent on the subtle body. The soul is carried by the subtle body continuously until liberated from gross material bondage. Text 60. The great sage Narada continued, the living entity acts in a gross body in this life. This body is forced to act by the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. After the gross body is lost, the subtle body is still there to enjoy or suffer. Thus, there is no change. Purport. The living entity has two kinds of body, the subtle body and the gross body. Actually, he enjoys through the subtle body, which is composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. The gross body is the instrumental outer covering. When the gross body is lost, or when it dies, the root of the gross body, the mind, intelligence, and ego, continues and brings about another gross body. Although the gross bodies apparently change, the real root of the gross body, the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego, is always there. The subtle body's activities, be they pious or impious, create another situation for the living entity to enjoy or suffer in the next gross body. Thus, the subtle body continues, whereas the gross bodies change one after another. Since modern scientists and philosophers are too materialistic, and since their knowledge is taken away by the illusory energy, they cannot explain how the gross body is changing. The materialistic philosopher, Darwin, has tried to study the changes of the gross body, but because he had no knowledge of either the subtle body or the soul, he could not clearly explain how the evolutionary process is going on. One may change the gross body, but he works in the subtle body. People cannot understand the activities of the subtle body, and consequently they are bewildered as to how the actions of one gross body affect another gross body. The activities of the subtle body are also guided by the supersoul, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavishto matak smritir jnanam apoanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Supersoul is always guiding the individual soul always knows how to act according to the reactions of his past karma. In other words, the Supersoul reminds him to act in such a way. Therefore, although there is apparently a change of in the gross body, there is a continuation between the lives of an individual soul. Text 61. The living entity, while dreaming, gives up the actual living body. Through the activities of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up this gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or a demigod's body on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. Purport. Although the root of distress and happiness is the mind, intelligence, and ego, a gross body is still required as an instrument for enjoyment. The gross body may change, but the subtle body continues to act. Unless the living entity gets another gross body, he will have to continue in a subtle body or a ghostly body. One becomes a ghost when the subtle body acts without the help of the instrumental gross body. One becomes a ghost when the subtle body acts without the help of the instrumental gross body. As stated in this verse, Shayanam imam utsrija shwashantam. The gross body may lie in a bed and rest, and even though the machinery of the gross body is working, the living entity may leave, go into a dream, and return to the gross body. When he returns to the gross body, he forgets his dream. Similarly, when the living entity takes on another gross body, he forgets the present gross body. The conclusion is that the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego creates an atmosphere with desires and ambitions that the living entity enjoys in the subtle body. Actually, the living entity is in the subtle body, even though the gross body apparently changes, and even though he inhabits the gross body on various planets. All the activities performed by the living entity in the subtle body are called illusory because they are not permanent. Liberation means getting out of the clutches of the subtle body. Liberation from the gross body simply involves the transmigration of the soul from one gross body to another. When the mind is educated in Krishna consciousness or higher consciousness, in the mode of goodness, one is transferred either to the upper heavenly planets or to the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planets. One therefore has to change his consciousness by cultivating knowledge received from Vedic instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the disciplic succession. If we train the subtle body in this way, by always thinking about Krishna, we will transfer to Krishna Loka after leaving the gross body. This is confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo viti tatpataha chaktva deham punar janma naitimam iti sorjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Thus the change of the gross body is not very important, but the change of the subtle body is important. This Krishna consciousness movement, this Krishna consciousness movement is educating people to enlighten the subtle body. So beautiful. Explains everything so clearly, Prabhupada. Let's hear that again. The Krishna consciousness movement, or thus the change of the gross body is not very important, but the change of the subtle body is important. The Krishna consciousness movement is educating people to enlighten the subtle body. The perfect example in this regard is Ambarish Maharaj, who always engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Savai Manat Krishna Padadavindayo. Similarly, in this life, we should always fix our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, who is present in his Archa, Vigraha, the incarnation of the deity in the temple. We should also always engage in his worship. If we engage our speech in describing the activities of the Lord, and our ears in hearing about his pastimes, and if we follow the regulative principles to keep the mind intact for advancing in Krishna consciousness, we shall certainly be elevated to the spiritual platform. Then at the time of death, the mind, intelligence, and ego will no longer be materially contaminated. The living entity is present, and the mind, intelligence, and ego are also present. When the mind, intelligence, and ego are purified, all the active senses of the living entity become spiritual. Thus the living entity attains his Satchit Ananda form. The Supreme Lord is always in his Satchit Ananda form. But the living entity, although part and parcel of the Lord, becomes materially contaminated when he desires to come to the material world for material enjoyment. The prescription for returning home, back to Godhead, is given by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Manmana babamad bhakto madhyajin mam namaskuru mamivaishyasya yukvaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Text 62. The living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this and I am that. My duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. These are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoctions. Thus, he gets another body. Purport. As long as one is absorbed in the bodily conception, his activities are performed on that platform. This is not very difficult to understand. In the world, we see that every nation is trying to supersede every other nation, and that every man is trying to advance beyond his fellow man. All these activities are going on under the name of advancement of civilization. There are many plans for making the body comfortable, and these plans are carried in the subtle body after the destruction of the gross body. It is not a fact that after the gross body is destroyed, the living entity is finished. Although many great philosophers and teachers in this world are under the impression that after the body is finished, everything is finished, this is not a fact. Narada Muni says in this verse that at death one takes his plans with him, griniyat, and to execute these plans he gets another body. This is called punar bhava. When the gross body is finished, the plans of the living entity are taken by the mind, and by the grace of the Lord, the living entity gets a chance to give these plans shape in the next life. This is known as the law of karma. As long as the mind is absorbed in the laws of karma, a certain type of body must be accepted in the next life. Karma is the aggregate of fruitive activities conducted to make this body comfortable or uncomfortable. We have actually seen that when one man was about to die, he requested his physician to give him a chance to live 4 more years so that he could finish his plans. This means that while dying, he was thinking of his plans. After his body was destroyed, he doubtlessly carried his plans with him by means of the subtle body composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. Thus he would get another chance by the grace of the Supreme Lord, the Supersoul, who is always within the heart. Sarvasya chaham ridi sanavishto matak smitir jnanam apovanam cha. In the next birth, one acquires remembrance from the Supersoul and begins to execute the plans begun in the previous life. This is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita in another verse. Ishvarak sarvabhutanam rijjajir dunatishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. 1861. Situated on the vehicle given by material nature and reminded by the Supersoul within the heart, the living entity struggles all over the universe to fulfill his plans, thinking, I am a Brahmana, I am a Kshatriya, I am an American, I am an Indian, and so on. All these designations are of the same essence. There is no point in becoming Brahmana in preference to an American, or becoming an American in preference to a Negro. After all, these are all bodily conceptions under the modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So now I'm going to change my daily plan here a little bit, and I want to read you from a little section of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which describes what you get to do after you get out of this material world and stop changing from one gross body to another and struggling and being forced by time and by our material desires to accept these gross bodies which are so miserable. Here's a little story. Not a story. This is Gopakumar, who has come back to Goloka Vrindavan, and now he's seeing certain things. You can say for the first time, but another thing you can say back into his original position. I'm going to read you the section that describes how Krishna goes into the forest. Sorry, I'm just looking for the right place. This is what happens when Krishna wakes up in the morning. Okay. Begins with Mother Yashoda. This is Mother Yashoda. She sat Krishna, and Gopakumar, Sarupa is his name in the spiritual world, is watching all this. She sat Krishna on a chair with his elder brother and adorned their limbs with ornaments and medicinal herbs suitable for the forest. Commentary. Besides decorative, this is Sanatana Goswami. Besides decorative ornaments, Yashoda placed various items on their bodies to assure their safety. This is the spiritual body now. This is after we've gone through all the gross and subtle bodies that we've been talking about, and we finally become serious and think of Krishna all the time. When you leave your body, this is where you go, and this is what you get to do. Besides decorative ornaments, Yashoda placed various items on their bodies to assure their safety. That's Krishna and Balaram, such as tiger nails, enchanted talismans, protective threads, herbs meant for healing wounds, and Garuda money, emeralds for guarding against poison. She engaged elderly Brahmana ladies and other ladies in offering blessings, and she made Krishna do all the prescribed rituals to prepare for his outing. Commentary. Elderly Brahmanis blessed Krishna, as did the older gopis. Krishna was more eager to get going than to touch his nose with his fingers and carry out other protective rituals. But his mother gave him no choice. Krishna took the lunch his mother gave him for noontime, stirred the cows from their rest, and got them in front of him and set off, playing his flute. Commentary. Mother Yashoda had prepared lunch for Krishna to take with him, and he packed as much of it as he could in a bag tied to a stick. He then roused the cows who were lying down and drove them forward, urging them on with the music of his flutes. Just then his companions came out in groups from the cowherd village and gathered around him. The boys were all fit to be his intimate friends. Commentary. Because the attention of the cowherd boys was never diverted to anything other than pleasing Krishna, the boys needed only to hear Krishna's flute to know that it was time to leave. It hardly mattered whether they had finished having breakfast or preparing themselves. If Krishna was going to the forest, they had to follow right behind. There were a great number of these companions of Krishna, and they naturally divided themselves into groups, led by prominent boys. All the boys, however, were completely fit to be with the Supreme Lord in close friendship. At one moment he and the boys played their flutes, at another their buffalo horns, and at still other some instruments fashioned from leaves. Thus he and the boys showed off by playing various kinds of music. Do you remember when we were kids, we would take the big grass and put it here between our thumbs and go, and it would blow a nice. That's just the air. But we put it, right? That's what they were doing. That's where it came from. When we were kids and we were playing, we didn't have cares and all these responsibilities and things. We just play with our friends. 164. As his friends, playthings in hand, joyfully sang, danced, and glorified him, Krishna stood with his brother. Commentary. Among the various things the boys carried were balls, drums, fans, flags, seats, umbrellas, chamara fans, hand cymbals, wooden shoes, and food and drink. This was the paraphernalia of their games in the forest. The boys were very happy to be taken away from their homes and on the way to the forest where they could play however they liked, free from the glances of mother and father. Krishna's elder brother walked in front and I walked behind. And the girls, unable to tolerate being separated from Krishna, found excuses to follow and came out from the village helplessly pulled by ropes of love. Commentary. Here Sarup gives the gopis only slight mention, referring to them as taha, those girls, because anything he says about them might stir his memories of the special relationships between the gopis and Krishna and disturb the mood he's trying to set. Because he's explaining this to his Brahmana disciple. Even though his relationship with Krishna was in Sakyaras, if he were to remember the gopis' love for Krishna, he would be unable to control his ecstasy. Very interesting, isn't it? Because here's Sarup, who was actually a cowherd boy, and now he's a cowherd boy in the spiritual world. But he's remembering, he's seeing all these things and telling what he saw to this prominent friend. Who told him to do that? Do you remember? Radharani told him to do that. Because this Brahmana went to a temple in Assam or someplace, or Guwahati, and was worshipping the goddess Kali, or not Katyayani, it was one form. I can't remember what the form's name. And then she came to him as a dream because she accepted his prayers, and tried to convince him to do this, do that. And then she told Saru, who was Gopakumar at the time, to help her devotee. So she's goddess Durga is an expansion of Radharani. So he was worshipping the expansion of Radharani. So then Radharani comes to Sarup, who was Gopakumar before, and tells him to help this devotee of hers. And then what happens? He also becomes a cowherd boy. This is very interesting, because they're all there, and they're all having their relationships, and one's helping the other. So it's not that, if you're in Gopi Bhav, then there's no one else, just me and the gopis and Krishna. You see? But these are the Sahaja teachings. And if you ever hear them coming, read this book and you understand how it's one big happy family in the spiritual world. Even so, they sometimes have their competitions, the gopis and the cowherd boys and all this. But it's all one big happy family. Radharani is helping Sarup come back as the cowherd boy, and went to Gopakumar or Sarup to tell him to help this disciple of hers, or this follower of hers. Very interesting. Text 166. This is chapter 6 from the second part of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Is this okay? Or no, it's not okay? You don't want me to read this? No, you want me to stop?
No.
Mother Yashoda saw Krishna perspiring from a mood of ecstasy and came to wipe his face, and went with him as far as the outer gates of the village, her breast wet with milk. Commentary. Krishna's face may have been perspiring because of the longing to be with the gopis that arose in him when he saw them following behind. Mother Yashoda, however, was concerned only with wiping his face. First she wiped with her hand, and then that didn't work. When that didn't work, she used the edge of her garment. At her request, she then turned back toward the house, but after 2 or 3 steps, she craned her neck and anxiously went back to her son. She made pan for him and put some in his mouth, and put some in his hand, and then again turned toward the house. But once again she quickly came back to him. Commentary. Just like the first time, Yashoda again nervously turned around, craned her neck to see him, and came back to him. Right in the path, she fed him some fruits and some other sweet things, and gave him something to drink. She then again started going back to the house, and then again turned around. She gave him a thorough looking over, and adjusted his clothes and the other things he had on, and then she once more turned back. But then she again returned, and plaintively gave him some instructions. Commentary. Yashoda spoke to Krishna anxiously because she knew he was naughty and he would likely ignore her advice. This is love. When you're really in love with Krishna, then he allows you to control him. And he likes it. My dear child, don't go too far into the impenetrable woods, and never enter deep into the forest where there are thorns. After speaking this way at length, beseeching him to take care, she once again turned home and took a few steps, and yet again came back. My dear boy Rama, she said, you should stay in front of your younger brother. And you, Sridharma, she's the real alpha female. And you, Sridharma, stay behind your friend Krishna with Sarup. So here he's just come. It's like he's only been there a day, and he's right there with them, right in the thick of things, being told by Mother Yashoda what to do. You, Angshu, you should stay on Krishna's right, and you, Subal, on his left. Straw between her teeth, she implored the boys with such requests. Then she looked intently at her son. Commentary. Balaram, the most competent of the boys, should walk in front of Krishna. Though the others would spontaneously take up their proper places, she directed them anyway, just to make sure. The phrase iti adikam indicates other requests. The boys should not let Krishna go into the thorny and dangerous places. They should provide him shade if the sun became too intense. They should be sure that he ate nicely at lunch. Coming to the end of her list of requests, Mother Yashoda looked intently at Krishna's face to invoke promises from Krishna and the other boys that they would do what she had asked. This is the Supreme Mother. In this way, Mother Yashoda, anxiously going back and forth and again, showed more love than a cow who has just given birth to a calf. Have you been with a cow who's just given birth to a calf? Have you? Anyone? Oh yeah. As soon as the calf comes out, she's right there licking, and taking care, nuzzling, and it's amazing to watch. It's just natural. And then the calf, just in a few minutes, gets up and goes right to the milk, right to the udder. It's amazing to watch. This exchange between Yashoda and Krishna went on for some time, but Sarupa wanted to avoid prolonging his description. Her son then bowed down to her. It's Krishna bowing down to Yashoda. Took hold of her feet and embraced her. And with various rationales, and finally with words of insistence of his own, with great effort, he made her turn back. Commentary. Krishna hoped that by showing this elaborate display of respect and affection, he could convince his mother of how seriously he took her words. He reminded her that she also had to eat breakfast and attend to various household chores. But when all his reasons failed to convince her, he finally simply insisted very strongly that she go back. All this he had to do several times before she finally relented. And she, crying, milk dripping from her breast, stood right there, motionless like a painted picture, and distantly watched from the high place near the forest. But the lovely gopis kept following him, their throats choked with weeping. They could no longer sing, nor see through their streams of tears. And their feet stumbled. This goes on every day. This is like every day goes to the forest, and every day this happens. And every time it happens, it's like it happens for the first time. In their shyness and fear, they had nothing they could do or say. Drowning in a great ocean of sorrow, they had no way to hold back their feelings. Commentary. As expressed by the word tu, however, the mood of the gopis is even more exalted than that of Mother Yashoda. The gopis, the Lord's most beloved devotees, are endowed with all excellent qualities, and now the gopis were overwhelmed with various emotions, such as their natural shyness, which decorated their personalities most of the time, and their fear of what their elders must be thinking and what the consequences might be of having left the village without permission. In the village, moreover, the gopis could counteract the pain of separation from Krishna by embracing and kissing him. But now that he was leaving for the day, there was nothing they could do. They lacked the strength even to ask, how can we live like this? According to a well-known psychological principle, nivedya, dukkam, sukhino bhavanti. Unhappy people can regain their peace of mind by revealing the cause of their distress. I read that. Can I say that again? Mm-hmm. Unhappy people can regain their peace of mind by revealing the cause of their distress. But here the gopis couldn't even express themselves, so they remained adrift in the vast ocean of their misery. 180. Krishna had stolen the hearts and the eyes of these young girls. The girls had come so far from the cowherd village, and now with some endeavor he stopped them. And as they looked at him, he repeatedly tried to send them home. He anxiously reassured them again and again through a trusted messenger. And by his own gestures, he stretched his neck to glance at the girls with love, signaled with his eyebrows, and did what he could to make the girls shy and even afraid. In this way he forced them to stop, and they stood in front of his mother, motionless, just like her. Commentary. The boys were now approaching the dense forest, an unsafe place for young girls. So Krishna had to send them back. By sending a boy as his go-between, and by making his own gestures, like knitting his eyebrows, shaking his head, and biting the tip of his tongue, he managed to convince them not to go any further. The gopis then joined Mother Yashoda on the same hill where the gopis stood still like pictures and cried profusely, just like her. Nanda, the king of the cowherds, naturally loved Krishna ever so much, but upon seeing his wife's loving concern, he was enslaved by overwhelming affection. Though Nanda Maharaj had gone with Krishna a great distance, and the elder cowherds with him, when Nanda saw the great burden of love all the people of Braj bore for his son, he was unable to turn back. Commentary. As the king of the cowherd community, Nanda would normally be surrounded by priests, advisors, and other Brajbasis. So along with Nanda and other leaders of the community, including his elder brother Upananda, were also following Krishna. But even out of regard for their comfort, Nanda couldn't bring himself to turn back. Nanda was delighted to see many auspicious omens and see the animals and other creatures all very happy. Yet he was distraught at having to be parted from his son Krishna. Commentary. The animals showed auspicious symptoms. They had full faces and bodies and were circling Nanda clockwise. The deer, birds, and other forest creatures were happy because their time for being separated from Krishna was night, and now it was time for Krishna to join them in the forest. Again and again, he embraced Krishna and Krishna's elder brother, both separately and together. He smelled their heads and shed tears in the pain of great love for them. Then Krishna bowed down to Nanda, reminded him of the many duties Nanda had to perform, and sent him home. Turned back, Nanda stood motionless, looking at Krishna and nothing else. Commentary. Krishna convinced Nanda, you are needed at home to save the villagers from becoming too wretched over my absence. Also in the afternoon, Nanda would have to organize the decorating of the village for Krishna's return. Every day, they would decorate the village before Krishna returned. That's it. No questions needed. No elaboration needed. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Sri Priya Bhagavatamrita ki jai. Sanatana Goswami ki jai. Now you know why Sanatana Goswami wrote that prayer about the Bhagavatam. Because this Priya Bhagavatamrita is the essence of the Bhagavatam. Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Sama Veda Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. I'll see you tomorrow, 4:30 Central Time, same place, same station. Hare Krishna. For all of you out there in cyberspace. Hare Krishna.